It's known as the Wołyń Massacre, when in 1943 Ukrainian paramilitaries massacred around 100,000 Poles and other ethnic minorities. The aim, to eradicate any foreign presence to prepare for a post-war Ukraine. Nationalism in its darkest form. How is the history treated in modern Poland and in modern Ukraine? Does truth or myth abide? Please join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Today, Poland commemorates one of the most tragic events in its history, the Wołyń Massacre, which unfolded amid World War II in present-day Ukraine. For years, the massacre, which saw thousands of Poles killed at the hands of Ukrainian Insurgent Army, has been a bone of contention between Warsaw and Kyiv.
Memory is crucial. There is no doubt that it was genocide, and we all agree on that. But it is important that we never forget what happened 81 years ago in Wołyń. We remember because we must at all costs resolve this matter, which casts a certain shadow on our relations with our friends in Ukraine.
July 11 commemorates so-called Bloody Sunday, when in 1943 Ukrainian nationalists attacked more than 100 Polish villages, killing at least 10,000 people over the span of 2 days. It was the culmination of the mass extermination of Polish civilians in Wolyń and the surrounding regions, which saw around 100,000 Poles killed in total.
This bandit has caught up with my dad, and he turned out to be our Ukrainian neighbor, Mr. Sasha Zhuk. My dad asked him, "Sasha, why do you want to kill me? What have I done to you?" And he replied, "Nothing. But I have to kill you because you are a Pole. But because you've been a good neighbor, I'm not going to torture you." And then he shot him.
But Poland's invaluable assistance to Ukraine after the Russian invasion has brought the two nations closer together, with Kyiv even beginning to acknowledge the wrongdoings of the past.
I would like to convey my deepest condolences to all families and descendants of those whose lives were cut short, as well as my gratitude for preserving the memory of the victims. Memory that doesn't call for revenge nor hatred, but serves as a caution that something like this should never happen again between our nations.
But despite the newly found brotherhood, the Wolyń Massacre still awaits final reconciliation between the two nations. Ukraine to this day hasn't allowed for exhumation of victims in countless unmarked graves across western Ukraine.
My guest today is Marcin Kaczorowski from the Memory of Nations Foundation. Welcome to the programme.
Hello.
It's a very, we called the massacre in 1943 the Wołyń Massacre, but it's not just in the Wołyń province of Poland at the time. Can you give us a brief outline of what happened, where it happened, and why it happened?
The murders of Poles by Ukrainian Insurgent Army, being the tool of the organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, Fraction B, so Banderist fraction, began already in 1942. And we were talking about the wartime period because, of course, organization of Ukrainian nationalists had a very long record of terrorist attacks before World War II, but let's focus on World War II. So, 1942, this is the time when Ukrainian Insurgent Army realized that Germany is going to lose the war.
And the territory of former Poland was occupied by the Germans?
By the Germans, but the Germans are going to withdraw, of course. They cheated the Ukrainian partners. They promised them independence. They gave them actually nothing. And Ukrainians realized that Soviets are coming, and those areas will be an issue. Namely, Poles will have to be removed before the Soviets arrive, so that Ukrainians will be able to show the public opinion this area is ethnically Ukrainian, it should be ours. So basically, it's a mixture of genocide with ethnic cleansing. So the orders that were given, 1942, 43 in particular, said eliminate all Poles living on those areas or try to scare the rest, chase them away. Of course, the message would be sent with unimaginable brutality and cruelty, so that Poles would fear to remain in the region. And the peak of those massacres in Wolyń region, that's summer 1943. Only in the summer of 1943, so July and August, about 20,000 people die, and the anniversary we are commemorating today, so the Bloody Sunday. Only on that day, 100 villages were attacked, with thousands of people killed also in the churches. Similar ethnic cleansing repeats in the eastern areas of Lesser Poland, so Eastern Galicia, also called this way. And no, the Ukrainians didn't have the advantage on those areas.
So the policy of either exterminating not just Polish influence, but some Czechs, Czech minorities, Jewish minorities,
Russians,
so
yes.
Russians as well.
Roma, anybody,
yeah.
really, yes.
That worked, and the preparation for achieving an ethnically pure Ukraine afterwards was successful.
If it was successful, well, many Poles definitely abandoned their homes, hearing about what's happening to their neighbors. Yep. If we can, well, look at it from the perspective of the perpetrators, the genocidal plan brought fruit. Yes, bore fruit. We got about 100,000, 150,000 people murdered, 2,000 villages not existing. Just in July and August, about 800 villages ceased to exist. Most of them will be burned down. Apart from the people slaughtered, also the cattle would be destroyed, sometimes in a similar way. So mutilated, tortured animals, burned down orchards. So the situation, the genocide shouldn't be compared, as we know, but it bears some resemblance to what happened in Rwanda, where the Hutu would be destroying everything, that's calling that this is Tutsi cow, so this is also a Tutsi. So basically it was about erasing all evidence of Polish presence in those regions.
Now, it's part of a very long history of conflict between Ukraine and Poland. There's been some, if we can say, reconciliation in terms on the government level, an acknowledgement of what happened. But how was the history treated when both countries were under Soviet rule? So well, post-war, was it just a taboo subject?
Well, first of all, I would disagree with the reconciliation on the governmental level for a single reason. To make this reconciliation serious and true, we would have to name the perpetrators and name the victims. And I think the last meeting between President Duda and President Zelensky mentioned victims of Wolyń, and that doesn't really explain who did what. Especially that the Ukrainian side maintains that that was not really genocide or extermination or ethnic cleansing, it was simply Polish-Ukrainian conflict, and the Polish civilians were killed as part of the combat, really, which is absolutely untrue.
Yes, since there wasn't a great presence of the Polish underground in that area.
Yes, in the previous times, there were many veterans from the communistic police, also Polish army, that would participate in the Vistula operation. So basically, removal of Ukrainians from the areas of southeastern Poland, also combined with fighting thousands of active members of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. Understandably,
this is done in cooperation with Soviet forces,
with the Soviet forces,
of the border.
Absolutely, and so we may say that Wolyń was labeled as genocidal activity of Ukrainian chauvinists and nationalists. So I wouldn't say that the narrative is much different. Of course, any cases of cooperation of very narrow group, very small group of Home Army and later Wien units desperately trying to find the Soviets cooperating with UPA. The communists would shed light on this and showcase it as an example of the betrayal of the patriotic side.
Yes, it's a very complex, multi-layered war, wasn't it, in that
Well, I can only quote the words of Mr. Henryk Ratyna, the decorated with the Virtuti Militari, the highest military decoration in Poland, who fought against the German SS cavalry in Zamoyskie region and also farther east, and also against the soldiers of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. He said in the lesser Poland, the Germans might have been the enemy number one. They were the enemy number one. They prevailed, and they were very deadly, and they hunted down not only the home army units but also pacified villages. Ukrainians would try to cross rivers and reach those regions, but really in the Wołyń region, Ukrainians were the number one enemy.
What lies at the current the current level of friction between historians and families of the victims about the exhumation of the graves in villages that were eradicated? How do you account for Ukrainian reluctance to allow Polish archaeologists and forensic archaeologists to dig up the corpses and give them a proper burial?
I think a refusal to do that is absolutely unacceptable. And
why do you think it is happening?
Will never be, because the exhumations would show the extent of the incredible cruelty of Ukrainian Insurgent Army. They chopped off heads, chopped off limbs, people mutilated before they were killed, also women and children. That would attract the attention of the international public and would destroy the false myth of Stepan Bandera and his followers being a national hero. I think Ukrainians would have to acknowledge the genocide in Wołyń #1 and perhaps look for better heroes to showcase them to their youth.
A recognition that happened would hit at the creation myth of modern Ukraine.
I wouldn't put it better.
What is the we know that this kind of the UPA, the UPA sentiment is very strong in Western Ukraine, centered around Lviv or Lvov, as Poles would know it. Is it a regional feeling or is it a national feeling? Someone from the far east of the Ukraine, large country, are they going to have the same attitude to the UPA as someone from the Western country? How is that?
I think those differences were more visible before the Russian invasion. And after the invasion started, the unifying aspect of Bandera and also the Ukrainian soldiers and commanders of the Ukrainian SS, that I think all the differences were put aside. And it's understandable, that's official state propaganda about UPA being the heroes and the Soviets being the ultimate evil. So I think before that, absolutely, yes. Before that, we can see the differences between how Yushchenko and Yanukovych treated the subject in Poland. That was treated as a great offense, that despite Lech Kaczyński's assistance to Ukraine, at some point President Yushchenko chose Roman Szuchewicz, announced the year, I don't remember which year it was, 2011 or 10, as the year of Roman Szuchewicz. So Roman Szuchewicz, one of the most prominent butchers and also commander of 30 to 40,000 fighters who previously served in the battalion Nachtigal. So basically one of the battalions of Ukrainian police used by Germans during the Holocaust extensively, and later also co-responsible for the genocide in Wołyń. So one of the greatest criminals from the Polish point of view, and indeed, of course, he was.
Yes, I mean, you have two versions of history: Polish version, Ukrainian version. Is it possible to find common ground, especially in this time of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine itself, or are the sentiments that you've illustrated about Stepan Bandera and the UPA, are they hardening into an ever deeper myth? How do you see that?
I think the cooperation with a country that was invaded by Russia and the historical memory, these are two completely different things, and we cannot corrupt the memory of our dead, the memory of those men, women and children butchered by Ukrainian nationalists in the name of good relations with our neighbor. And also I give you a practical reason for that, because I don't see, well, if we look at different nations around the world, we cannot see any two countries that are true friends that built their relations on genocide that was swept under the carpet. And China and Japan is a good example, Turkey and Armenia, another example.
Yes.
The British-Boer relations, South African relations, I think these are things that come back to the memory of those nations after 100 or 150 years, and the beef between those two nations remains. So I think the only way to sort it out is doing what Willy Brandt did in Warsaw, kneeling before the victims, saying we are terribly sorry for the crimes and atrocities committed on Polish people by the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. And it's not about the Polish-Ukrainian conflict, which is evident. It's not the wars that are that remain in the memory of neighbors. Yes, the Germans and the French could have put aside their conflict and forget about the wars in the 19th century, of course, because yes, no genocide was committed at the time. Here is a completely different situation, and we also have to remember about one thing. The Germans were the most dangerous enemy of Poles during World War II. Soviets were the most sneaky and double-dealing and treacherous, while the most cruel enemy of Polish people, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, will be remembered, I think, for the centuries to come. Yeah. And not much can change it. History
happened, and there's no way around it, is there? And yes, as you said, there are plenty of examples of cruelty on all sides, and plenty of examples of reconciliation, and at least in terms of the historical recognition of the fact.
Absolutely, and we should not forget also about the Ukrainians that were made to serve UPA, the people who were helping Poles, and there were quite many yes, Ukrainians who delivered information, who tried to hide Polish children, for instance. They risked exactly the same punishment as Poles were being yes, massacred. And also that brings us to the issue of why it would be quite easy to shed more light on what Ukrainian Insurgent Army did to their own people. Namely, they terrorized other Ukrainians to really have no choice, destroying other competitive fractions, including Melnik and Bulba fractions. It was like similar to the knife of long knives in Germany, and any suspicion of betrayal would be punished most cruelly. This way, many civilians didn't have a choice, yes, and even the members of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. And I think this is the most shocking fact about the Wołyń massacre. The members of UPA were made to kill their spouses, their children, only because there was Polish blood in their veins, which brings us to the saddest summary. And this is also why Poles will never forget what happened. I don't think they will. Namely, if a Pole wanted to betray and say a German informer, they had a chance to be Volksdeutsche. If they wanted to bring their friends from Home Army on a silver platter to NKVD, they could do that and become a Soviet traitor. However, no Pole could ever join UPA, yes, only because of his origin. He would be killed. So that's exactly the same school of thought that the German Nazis applied to Jews and Roma people.
We'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. Marcin Kaczorowski, thanks for coming onto the programme. And on a personal note, my father's family was saved by Ukrainian. So it's yes, one of those little those grains of humanity.
People happened to, yes.
So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Do join us again for How We Got Here.